Ta-da! Champions of demolition.
In the tall trees where the coyotes howl and the frogs sing into the night, there is a big metal shed, and inside is a boat. That boat is where this story takes place. Hello, welcome back to the boat shed, where we've got some more work to do, as always. So the Bulwarks project is continuing, as it will do for the next few episodes, because there's lots of steps involved there. If you missed the beginning of the Bulwarks project, you can check out the last episode. But along with that, we've also got a few odd jobs to do, not all of them pleasant, such as cleaning out our water tank, which is an unfortunate job to have to do because there was water left in there for, 10 years. And as you can imagine, it's a bit of a primordial soup. We don't know, maybe COVID started in our water tanks. We've got no idea. It's quite a mess. So a few things like that. Let's get to it. Okay, so the Bulwarks continue. So we took the cap rail off in the last episode, so now we're just left with, well, the Bulwarks, not covered by any visual niceties. So it looks a bit kind of weird at the moment. There's just this sealant and stuff. So the first step is just scraping all this stuff off. That's going to be a tedious job. That's not necessarily exciting to capture on camera, but I'm just gonna scrape it all off, and then we should be uncovering the wood in the Bulwarks, and that's what we're going to be prying away and eventually replacing with high density foam and or fiberglass at different locations. And what's your project for the day, my love?
Fine, I'll start with the water tanks.
I appreciate it. Well, would you like to switch?
Oh, would you? I thought you didn't want to do the tanks.
Well, nobody wants to do the tanks, Aladdin. That's just like no human in the world.
No, that's alright. And I mean, I'll help you with the scraping.
Well, I'll help you with the tanks too.
Alrighty. So are you filming?
Mm-hmm.
So our water tanks are underneath the cabin sole, and I can lift the floorboards here in different sections. And then there is inspection ports. So you can see it's a fiberglass tank, which is fiberglassed into the hull. And these are the inspection ports. Ta-da! Yep, this is where our drinking water is supposed to come from. And I just have many questions about these tanks. I wonder if it's in different compartments or if they're all connected. Those are all important things to us. So this inspection port is able to reveal many questions, but ultimately just getting my hand in there to clean it is not going to be satisfactorily enough.
Satisfactory?
Oh. Satisfactory enough. I am very certain we'll have to cut up the entire top section of fiberglass to really grind all the walls and put like a food grade epoxy on it. So I would have much preferred a siphoning hose, but the only thing I could find is this impeller pump. Basically there's an impeller in here which is driven by the drill, and of course I get suction here and I pump the water into this bucket, and then I'll just go back and forth. And I'll change method if it becomes too tedious with this little bucket, but maybe it's not that much water, we'll see.
I'm done. I have spent so much time hunched over these bulwarks, removing the varnish on the cap rail, removing the screws and the bungs, and now removing this putty, so I'm feeling way stiffer than I should be considering my age. But it's done, and Aladino has also emptied the water tanks, so we've had a good, productive day so far. What time is it now? Like 3? I think it's about 3 in the afternoon. We had lunch. Superdini! And what are you working on now?
Scott, how the hell did you know that I was going to need these? They are tin snips, and it's amazing. They're basically like scissors, but they can cut through this stuff. So yeah, after emptying the water tanks, I'm getting to definitely closing the shed here. So I just found some scraps, and I have to get them into the right shape.
Outside of the boat shed, the first real spring day was warming the land. After a long COVID winter, these rays of sunshine felt jubilant, like the coming of hope and joy and all things good. I couldn't help myself. I had to shrug off work for the rest of the day and go enjoy it. Aladino and I have a lot of dreams. We dream of sailing to faraway places. We dream of an elegant boat that will fly wing on wing with the dolphins as we follow the trade winds to lonely islands. But life isn't only about the future, it's also about every present moment, and so I breathed it all in.
I look out for you to soothe away the blues in your eyes, in your eyes. Looking out from my window, city lights and a still glowing looking out from my window, city lights and a still glowing blue. Take your time, fall in line someday. It's hard to win, hard to pin one day. I look out for you to soothe away the blues in your eyes, in your
So today I'm continuing to tackle the Bulwarks project because everything plywood has to come off. And what I did yesterday was scrape some of the fiberglass off the top. But that was really tedious. I need to come up with a better system now. I don't actually have a plan on how to do it yet, but that's why I have many different tools up here, and I'm gonna try every single one of them to come up with not only the quickest method, but also the one that makes the least mess. And also I'm looking for the method that poses the least risk of damaging the fiberglass hull, which is just next to the plywood bulwarks. I think so far I've come to the conclusion that the angle grinder with a cutting wheel is really nice to cut fiberglass. I can just make a very shallow cut, and then you can very easily peel fiberglass off the plywood. It didn't bond very well, which is to our advantage, and it came off real easy. And after that I was starting to pry to get them apart, but it's a really stiff and big chunk of plywood. So actually, to really get it off there, it is much better to make cuts into it. So I'm making probably one cut. I will do it in the middle, and then I will make a few vertical ones. So then each time that I take the chisel to it, then basically you just get square by square off. There could be quicker methods, and that would be to try to make one cut with the fine, for example, or with this one, but this one is a bit too aggressive and it could harm the fiberglass hull. So maybe I'll do a few cuts with this, being really careful of the depth of cut and really only where it's safe and where I'm sure that I'm only cutting the plywood. But maybe this will be my friend in doing that. And maybe just one cut at the bottom could even help of getting it off in bigger chunks, but I start small and then I go a little bit bigger. I see what works best.
On the bayou, by the delta, the desert river that run both ways, and the cypress alleys go on for days.
It's time for orange juice and a banana, but we're making great progress and I'm discovering many little things along the way. For example, the plywood in the bulwarks stops about here. There is a scarf joint, and from here running aft is still original, and that is also, for example, where one of those scuppers are, one of the water deck drains. And it had a crack, as we saw in the survey, and guess what? The wood underneath is all black and not mushy yet, but it's all soaked and wet. So here you can see it very clearly. This is where the solid wood meets the plywood, and you see how water is spreading, because it started somewhere here. And now it's all the way to here, about a foot in the plywood already as well. And this has been replaced recently, so it's not deteriorated quite yet, but it is moist. And one more thing I was really surprised is that around these scuppers, the fiberglass just really does the surface and it doesn't go inward. It did on some, like here, you can clearly see the fiberglass wraps around and it also goes on the inside. But interestingly enough, on these ones here, it's just putty and paint. And that is also probably why we did get this very pronounced crack here. Very interesting methodology. So that is one thing that confirms why it is best to do what we are doing right now. And here, other things that are visible to me is the sealant that they used to glue the plywood onto here. And there is huge gaps. It's like it almost cured before the board was fully squeezed onto it. We will consult with Todd from Cape George Marine Works to know how the pros do it, but I betcha that it is not sealant that you would apply here or some similar polyurethane glue, but you would use something that is more liquid, that seeps into the wood if you're using wood here. And you would try to not have any gaps. So you would apply it very thickly, and then you would use a spatula to get it even across. You would epoxy the wood on one side so that it soaks in, and then you would fully squeeze them together so there's squeeze out everywhere. And instead here you can literally see how they applied the glue out of the caulking gun and then put the board on, and it seems really nice and tight on top here, but it didn't actually make it all the way. This is all gaps, and once water seeps in, that water sits there. I wouldn't have done it this way, let's put it that way, but it is nice for us because this will be a relatively easy cleanup. If this was made with epoxy and a lot of putty, this would be hellish to get off. Well, it is also true that I often go for the overkill method, and it is a fair point that, for example, there is fiberglass on top and the cap rail is sealed and on it, but still, when afterwards you have screws running into it which are not properly bedded, you still get water in there. So to me, thinking overkill and trying is still the better way to go. And I'm really stoked. This is working quite well, and already I am confident to say that I will be one of those rare people on planet Earth that have disassembled a Cape George cutter bulwark. And I am mighty proud of that. Let's see if we also make it to being a couple that also rebuilt one, not just the disassembly part, but we're on our way. And on we go with our challenge of removing bulwarks. I did the entire starboard side yesterday, and now we tackle the port side. Let's see if I can actually make it through the whole one. I'm quite sore. So I wasn't quite certain how to tackle this yesterday. I tried many methods, but I think I came up with one that works really well now. So what I do initially is I take the angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, and I just do a very shallow cut to cut the fiberglass at the deck level. And then I may do one on top as well, just to cut the fiberglass. And then I try to peel as much as possible off. Now, where there's a 90-degree angle, it's most likely going to split and the top is going to stay on, because there it's a lot of end grain and a lot of epoxy soaked in, so it holds much better. But I can peel this side off. And once that one is peeled off, I'll take the Sawzall and I'll make vertical cuts every foot or so that when I take the pry bar and then I use the hammer and I get section by section off. And initially I don't get the full depth of plywood because it is quite strong, not as strong as the fiberglass hull, but still I risk of bending it a tiny bit. So I don't want to do that, so I take only half of the plywood, and then as there is only one layer of plywood left, which is about 10 millimeters, then there is no worries about bending or damaging the hull, and then I can pry that one off too. Surprise, surprise! Check this out. In the new bulwarks, there's moisture again. Oh, I love this. So this is right where the chain plates went through with these bolts, and they were not bedded enough, so you can see this is all black, and it's just a matter of time until it starts deteriorating. So we are quite happy we're getting rid of all of this, even if it seems fairly new at the moment. Ta-da! Champions of demolition. All right, the next steps will be cleaning up this mess a little bit, and then we still have quite a bit of work to do on the bulwarks to clean up the surface. There's still lots of goop, and it is quite difficult to get off because it's elastic, and we're trying different methods, but it doesn't cut too well, it doesn't grind too well, and the heat gun, which works, is really slow. But first, let's have a break.
Absolutely, it feels so good to have these bulwarks off. It only took 2 days, although like Aladino mentioned, now the real work begins because I have been trying to get this sealant off, and it doesn't come very easy, so it's a kind of a multi-step process. But anyway, that's going to be for another episode. For now, this episode is finished, and we want to thank you so much for watching. It's such a joy for me to make these episodes. Pretty much the routine now is that every evening after dinner is my editing time, and I slowly work on these episodes and get them all ready. So that's been a lot of fun. And this whole process has just been extra fun for me to film too. I mean, we've been filming our adventures for the past, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. But having this new camera has just made it such a joy for me to go through the footage. Everything just looks so great. So again, another thank you to Charlene for the new camera, and also a really, really big thank you to Scott. We've mentioned Scott before, but holy cow, I mean, we've only been here in real time now 2 weeks. We've managed to take all this hardware off, we've managed to deconstruct the bulwarks, set up our workshop, and that's all thanks to Scott for setting us up with all the tools we need, because otherwise these first 2 weeks probably would have just been setting up shop, and every time we go to do something we realize we need another tool for it or whatever. So we've got some pretty amazing people helping us make all this a reality, and thanks to you guys all for watching. Thanks for leaving a thumbs up, which really does help, for leaving a comment, for subscribing, and of course an extra big thanks to our patrons for making all of this possible. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so for as little as $2 a month. It's really up to you what you pay, and you get access to all sorts of behind-the-scenes bonuses, most notably a real-time update every Tuesday. So that's it from us now, and we'll see you all next Friday.